Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope everybody had a good lunch and will not have too many people sleeping, or if you want to sleep, then just don't snore, because we have a really amazing roster of speakers in this panel. Now, as you can see, the name of the panel is Emerging Generation Z, so one question we all have probably before we even ask the panelists to the broader audience, what the hell is Generation Z? I mean, we know Generation X, we know Generation Y, now Generation Z, which is supposed to be probably kids between the ages of 10 and 20, more or less, if you make an average of all the other theses. So I have an 11-year-old kid. He's probably Z-Gen. I have a 7-year-old kid, and today with the pace of generations changing, I don't know what he's going to be. Is it going to be like an Excel sheet that after X, Y, Z, he's going to be Generation AA, and then Generation AB, or what have you? And how do you make these distinctions? But one thing we know, it's all very different than what we're used to, people our age, and it's great challenges to both newcomers to this industry and to the biggest companies in the world, of which we have 4 representatives here. And I'm very happy to welcome to the stage Joe from Viacom, Georgie from Hearst. Yeah, where I come from, that's where you clap. Sarah from Channel 4, and Dolly from Condé Nast.
We're sitting together, aren't we? Saying like.
So let's just squeeze in. I prefer.
Yes,
I'd be happy to. Oh, so I'll
this is
switch
very
here.
bright.
So maybe first we'll make a round of introductions. We'll go through the panelists, and if you all can introduce yourself a little bit and your company that you work for. Sarah, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Sarah, Channel 4. I head up the Consumer Insight Division, so all the audience research and our data strategy. Been there 10 years. I used to run the commercial division.
Okay.
I'm Georgie Holt. I am the publisher of Cosmopolitan. I've been with Hearst magazines for about 2 years now, and recently took up the role about a month ago, 2 months ago, so it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, and Cosmopolitan, for those who don't know, that's part of the Hearst group. Can you tell us a word about the whole group?
Yeah, so Hearst is a magazine company. We publish some of the most iconic and best-loved magazines in the country: Good Housekeeping, Harper's Bazaar, Elle magazine. We reach about 1 in 3 women in the UK, about 1 in 2 millennials, and I think about 3 million Generation Z, as we say in the UK, or Z, as you like to call it.
Great. Joe.
Hi, I'm Joanna Wells. I'm from Viacom. I'm VP of Digital and head up Comedy Central and MTV for UK and international. Under that, we look after all of social, Facebook. I run Snapchat Discover for both brands, so I think I'm quite well versed in Gen Z and what they like and what they want to watch and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and Dolly?
I'm Dolly. I ran Vogue, British Vogue Digital for about 15 years before taking on the digital strategy director role of Condé Nast in Britain. So all of digital strategy for all Condé Nast titles: Vogue, GQ, Vanity Fair, Tatler, House and Garden. I can't think of them all, but there are about 12.
And can you also, if anybody's not familiar, can you tell a little bit about the more known Condé Nast properties?
Well, Vogue specifically, so I was there just before Vogue launched its website and started working on it as soon as we went live with a kind of one-page website a million years ago. And we got it up and running, and then obviously social media took hold. So we've had to change the whole Vogue remit really as digital has taken hold, which is why we're not too intimidated by Generation Z, because we've already lived through some generations, and the changes that that's meant for a really old dinosaur of a company like Condé Nast. We've had to be pretty agile.
Great, and that leads me to the first question, and we'll say with you. So I assume many big media companies understand now they kind of need to redesign the proposition and so on, first because of the new generations that are coming, but also it changes a little bit the habits of the existing generations. Can you share a little bit more about what are the steps you're doing?
Yeah, I think the thing is to just really keep an open mind all the time, and I think we have more of an opportunity now than ever before, obviously, to listen to our audience, and with all of the data insight that we can now understand and act upon. But I think certainly with Condé Nast being such a kind of heritage company, full of heritage, incredibly powerful heritage brands, there was a tendency to assume that things like, say, Facebook weren't really very on brand. They were a little bit too near the consumer, and we were very aloof as Vogue, and we wanted to be authoritative and kind of talking down to our audience. And as social media has taken hold and we've seen how people are just, it's such a part of people's lives that to be aloof and to be away from our consumer was going to kill the business. So it's made us change our publishing strategy on a minute-by-minute basis from being a kind of lofty monthly authority to being really in conversation with our consumer the whole time. So it changes the way you think of your product, because we, for example, with Twitter on Vogue, we thought, Twitter is way off brand for Vogue. We can't put Vogue on Twitter. And then we thought, well, let's try it. Everyone else seems to be. So we were a little bit late to the party, but the first thing we did was launch the Today I'm Wearing hashtag. And I used to just make up an outfit and hashtag Today I'm Wearing, because I obviously couldn't afford the clothes that I was talking about. And the hashtag just took off, and so we then used that across all of the platforms as they launched. Mm-hmm. And it was huge, and it was a way of providing a little bit of Vogue into everybody's life that otherwise it was too sort of almost intimidating, but now we can really live with them.
And how much do you think influence or impact had the fact that it's still a step done by a big brand? Did that?
What, sorry?
That you did it when you launched something like this under a big brand, or I'll rephrase the question. When you take these social steps, what do you think the contribution is of the brand, either of the group or a specific property that launches that?
Well, I think it had influence because people, everyone said, oh, I hate Instagram, I don't want just to see what people are eating. And it's like, well, just don't do what everyone's eating then. Think of some unique way of doing it. And the skill, I think, that we kind of employed for Vogue specifically on social media was to think of a unique Vogue way of doing Facebook or of doing Twitter. And that was inspiring in itself. So we kind of expanded the horizons of people on Twitter or on these platforms to think, okay, well, I want to be my own person, I want to be my own brand and generate my own kind of following, not just what I'm having for lunch, but actually what my personal business can be.
Yeah, great. Joe, the same question, more or less.
I think we come from a totally different space with MTV because we have to be at the forefront, we have to be ahead of the curve, we have to be innovating. Whatever platform comes out, we need to at least give it a go, try, see if it resonates with the audience. I think Snapchat's a prime example. We were one of the first brands with Cosmo on Discover, and we now have billions and billions of views. And it's totally changed the way we've done our digital business. MTV is always evolving. It's funny. It's irreverent. The way we've looked at our 360, how we support the linear TV shows, our multi-platform approach. It's not just a part of the business. It's fully incorporated into the business. And we have the added bonus of having Nickelodeon, so we get all the insights from Nickelodeon coming through to MTV. And it's also changed the way we've done Comedy Central. Comedy Central was really millennials, and having something like Comedy Central on Snapchat, we've really had to change our strategy, content strategy towards that. And it's just about creating really fun, engaging, innovative, but also disposable content. And I think that's what's hard for a linear TV company to initially, and a magazine company to get its head round. It's like, this is seen for 24 hours and it's gone. And the amount of time and energy we put into creating that. And also, we want it to be absolutely understood that that's MTV as soon as you see it. So it's about having that kind of unique ISP in a really crowded market space.
Yeah, so that will lead to my next question to you. And I have to testify, MTV, at least from my experience, I don't know how many of you saw the panel with Shaul from Playbuzz earlier. I'm a lucky investor in that company, and MTV was the first brands that kind of organically adopted it, not because we made a sales pitch, just because they saw something like this trending. They adopted it, they built a lot of items. So, and obviously that goes in Snapchat, like you said, in very, very huge scale. Now then, people in Snapchat, at least in the Discover, they see it under the MTV umbrella. Sometimes when you create a quiz with Playbuzz, for instance, or I don't know how the specific Viacom properties work with on YouTube, etc., people will see your item, but not necessarily under the Viacom umbrella, or not even in a channel 67, which is the MTV channel. They see it everywhere, not in a certain destination. How does you think that affects the brands that create that content?
Well,
each content piece has a life of its own.
Yeah, and I think that's how we look at it, and each content piece works differently on each platform, and I think that you have to make things specifically for that platform. The things we put on Facebook are not the things we put on YouTube, and the things we put on Snapchat have to completely be incorporated into the Snapchat Discover world. If you try and shoehorn something into it, that's one of the biggest things with our generation, is it has to feel that it's relevant, it has to feel that it's genuine, and it can't be forced. And, you know, we've all seen people trying to adopt kind of like certain speech patterns and do all those things. And one of the things that we do at MTV, and one of the things I'm most proud of, is our intern scheme and our apprentice scheme. So we have Gen Z creating content for Gen Z, and we have millennials now creating content for Gen Z. And I think it's really important to have that diverse ecosystem in your work. And they've all grown up with this. You know, I look at my kid, if he can't touch something or tap it, he's like, it's broken. You know, and it's that kind of how, you know, technology and the way in which it's not only the platforms, it's the devices. And I think that's something you really have to bear in mind, and always sort of, we're mobile first in everything we do.
Yeah, excellent. And it's a similar question with a different flavor to Georgie here is, I'm sure everybody knows the Cosmo brand and some of the other world-known Hearst brands. But I say, I don't know how many people, I will not ask you that, because the question will probably be, I will not ask any of the panel skills, the answer will be probably not as many. But today people don't go necessarily and do cosmopolitan.com. They go, they either subscribe to something, they have the channels on Snapchat or Facebook pages and so on, and you need to get some social traffic, either acquired or organic or what have you, but still, it's not that monthly subscription anymore, it's not going to Cosmo.com. How do you adapt to this world? 3 million Z-Gens, you said, right?
Yeah, across our business. I mean, we think of Cosmopolitan as a brand and an ecosystem. And we kind of call it the Trinity. So you've got your print, your digital, and then your events. So we've had to be really agile to keep up with our consumer, because they kind of changed the landscape around us. So we really obsess about her, and we really think about creating content that she loves and going where she is. And that's kind of the big thing that we've changed our whole business model around, is rather than hoping they'd come to us, we kind of made these really arrogant assumptions about the newsstand. People would still come to the newsstand once a month, spend relatively quite a lot of money on a magazine, month in, month out, maybe with the promise of a free beach bag or some flip-flops. But you know, that wasn't a sustainable business model. We need to stop thinking like that and start thinking about going where she was rather than hoping she came to us. So, you know, in terms of how we've innovated print, we've thought about distributing our product in new ways. So we give it away 100,000 copies every single month in high millennial areas and Gen Z in Westfield in London. We've got the Snapchat Discover channel. Alongside Joe, we were one of the first to break into Snapchat and create content for her. But that, again, was understanding where she was and where she was living her life as a digital native. And Snapchat was one of those channels. And it felt like a really natural connection to put our brand into Snapchat. And similar to Joe, we've seen an absolute explosion in growth in that channel. You know, we are seeing sort of up to 1 million daily unique users. They're incredibly engaged. And you know, we're thrilled with the results. And again, it's always thinking about, where's my new innovation in content? Where's my new distribution channel? You know, we've got massive value in all of our brands. They all stand for something really important with all of our audiences. But it's about positioning that content about where they are and understanding what she wants and creating it on her terms.
Yeah, so, but then at some point, we all mentioned the Snapchat, and then of course we know that this is the future. I asked a 12-year girl recently if you had to give up one thing, Snapchat or TV, what would you give up? Anybody in the audience want to guess? Yeah, of course the answer is TV. But it wasn't what she said, but it was how she said. It wasn't, do I really have to give up one? It's a tough one. Can I watch one on the weekend? No, it was, of course TV, duh. Or something like that. So, but now, at some point, and knowing a little bit the Snapchat organization, there is probably a 25-year-old kid somewhere in LA that he decides who's going to be on the Snapchat Discover or not.
Yeah.
And the Hearst brand, you know, going all the way to Rosebud and before Citizen Kane, etc. it's forever. It's an institution. It's beyond just a media company right now, but still dependent on the Snapchat will or the ability to work.
It's changing everything. I mean, we've got these amazing testimonials of people who have young nieces or daughters who are coming in and saying, "Oh my God, Mum," or "I've just found this amazing new thing called Cosmopolitan on Snapchat. It's awesome." And they're like, "Well, that's a magazine brand." And they're like, almost, what's a magazine brand? But also in terms of, they're almost blown away that it exists in another world for them. So again, it's the equity of our brands and putting them, because we create this content that people love to share and read, and it's really meaningful, but it's about putting it where they are. And who knows, print might be a very different thing in 5 or 10 years' time, but the brands like Vogue and Cosmopolitan and Good Housekeeping and Elle and Glamour, they still have resonance. It's about what's the next big content channel, where are they, and how do we put our brands in front of them?
Well, excellent, and it's encouraging also to see that such well-established companies, all three up to now, probably Channel 4, are adapting. And Sarah, same question to you. Now, you're the representative also of the traditional TV
the one
industry.
the 12-year-old just binned. Yeah, I know.
Exactly. That's a better answer than I expected. But as the representative of the traditional TV, big TV, that's even a more extreme example of this world. And again, not just Snapchat, but mainly Snapchat, but just social, how you get more stories, especially, I think we all saw now a few very tragic events around the world in news that you'll see, from terrorist attack in Paris. A few minutes later, you can see in every TV channel in the world pictures that people took from with their phone cameras from a few different angles, and the same if there is a tsunami or any other type of disasters. People are there with their phones before. They have the social networks there, and even scripted things. I don't know if everybody remembers Charlie Sheen freaking out. That was the best reality show ever, and every week something else happened with this guy. So it's all getting radical. A lot of sources, everything very rapidly. How does a linear or a used to be linear TV company cope with this?
I feel the need to say, first of all, I don't think TV is broken for this demo. I don't know whether MTV Central must agree with that. So yes, the
I agree with that as well, by the way.
are out on all their platforms, but they're also still watching to quite an extraordinary degree live linear TV.
I wouldn't do my job as a moderator if I hadn't added a little bit of provocation here.
But our greatest fear is we can't be complacent about that.
Yeah.
Initially, nobody's mentioned monetization models yet, or commercial models, but clearly our primary commercial source of revenue is still mainstream advertising on the mainstream television set. But we know that the audience is out there doing different things, and then we know if we don't go to them, then our brand will lose any resonance later in life. We also know that while younger audiences go out, they do tend to come back, because we can see that over the last decade or so, but we can't be complacent about that either, because we're probably in an age of greater disruption now than we've ever had before. So I joined Channel 4 to launch what was 4OD and is now All 4, which is our OTT service, and that's on 26 platforms now. So similarly, with the editorial message that you've been talking about, we've had to take our content to where the audience is, and this isn't just Gen Z, this is all audiences, but specifically probably the millennials. We've had to go to wherever they are. And interestingly, when they can, they get that content back onto the big screen. So our viewing is increasing to the big screen, even if it's via their Chromecast or thrown from their Apple TV or whatever it might be. So the traditional models remain, but you have to acknowledge that there's a lot more activity out there that we've got to be a part of.
Yeah, excellent. And you actually led to another great question, so we'll do another round in that order. Commercial models. So this year is the tipping point where advertising on digital platform is surpassing TV advertising. Now, obviously, in the digital world, this spreads around many more players than the traditional TV, but that means that even though the TV advertising economy per company is very big, it's still shifting there. Now, you're all on those platforms, and there are new gatekeepers and so on. How do you adopt the commercial channel just to, at first it's probably harder to keep up with the pace of the changes, to change also business practices, but secondly, how can you build an economics when it's so spread and diverse?
Well, that's where the tech provides the opportunity as well as the threat. So TV advertising, without being too boring about stats, is pretty resilient. Again, we don't apply complacency to that. It won't necessarily remain the case, but the money the media spend that's coming into television is relatively flat. So that's a good base to start with. But then tech enables us to dynamically insert ads and target them. So All 4 has 1 in 2 of every 16 to 24-year-old in the country. We know everything they watch on our services, they logged in to do so. Therefore, we know what they watch, when they watch it, what else they watch. We can graph that onto other lifestyle data that shows what they like, and then we serve them targeted ads. Now, there's much debate about how appealing that is or not, but they are a lot more effective when they're relevant to you. I would say as well that Gen Z, who we don't target because they don't, or the under 16s don't register on the app, they are incredibly commercially savvy. And they're very good at recognizing commercial messages, and they know when they're having things sold to them. And rather refreshingly for a commercial broadcaster, they don't seem to mind because they understand the trade-off and the exchange. And that's like a really nice revolution
for sure. I mean,
for us.
for young generation, sometimes the brands are their new celebrities, their heroes. They want to communicate with the brands, and more brands are communicating
and they
back.
understand that YouTube stars are sometimes selling something, and they can, open eyes, go and buy that thing if they like that
YouTube stars are selling something? You ruined
They're
YouTube
really
for me
clear.
now.
There's no fakery to that. That authenticity thing applies to the commercial models as much as the editorial content. And for a commercial broadcaster, that's really refreshing.
Yeah, oh, excellent. I think there's a lot of exciting and stuff and new innovation around that too. And same question from a publisher perspective, Georgina.
I mean, it's been an interesting few years, let's put it that way. But when we think of our brand as an ecosystem, we can then start to monetize different parts of it. Is it the print product, the digital? Is it the Snapchat? Is it the social? Is it the event? Most advertisers want scale, right? They want big numbers, or they want really meaningful, deep, immersive conversations. And I think with a lot of the brands you've got up here, we can do both. You can pick out an audience who's super highly engaged with your content in social or on Snapchat or in print, or you can speak to all of them at scale and kind of create a bigger, longer-term campaign. So it's about understanding what the client wants. It's about understanding that the print product is still the heritage part of our business. It's still the biggest revenue driver for Hearst. Digital is catching up, but it's about making those meaningful connections for advertisers. And I think all of the brands up here are able to do that, and that's what builds bonds, and that's what advertisers want to connect with. And I think you're right with Gen Z, is that they're willing to bond with content that is meaningful and they get something back from, whether that's from an advertiser or from a brand. And in the best world, it's both of those things together, because it's a brand I love from another brand I love talking together to me about something I love. That's really meaningful and very powerful for advertisers. And the more work we do like that, the better the outcome is for the consumer ultimately, because they're getting content they love, they're getting an experience they like, and it just deepens those bonds over the longer term.
Yeah, great. And Georgie is also Joe, same question.
Yeah, I think
commercial
like
models.
MTV Movies is a really good example for us. It's something I took over running a couple of years ago. And we really was, getting a lot of advertising revenue from TV, but then it was like, how can we move this on to digital? What can we do? And then it was like just getting those audience reach numbers out, and then looking at innovative ways of putting content on Snapchat and across platforms. And then MTV News, everybody knows MTV News. We decided to take it off linear last year and actually have a pure digital proposition. And we've gone from sort of having not that many sort of linear eyeballs, because it's not like an appointment today, it's just went on whenever it's a junction, it's a kind of thing like that, to having over 90 million video views a month in 3 months since launching, because we're multi-platform, because you can watch it when and where you want to watch it. And so that's, again, a really good revenue model and a way we started looking at things. And I think having the balls to experience with stuff and to take stuff off linear, which is still one of our biggest revenue drivers, and sort of say, actually, we're going to try this, and we're going to try these things. And when you're going to an advertiser and say, I can get you 90 million views, they're like, yeah, that's interesting. That is a really nice story to tell. So I think it's just about kind of playing around with things and just experimenting. And we're lucky that we're able to do that. And we're lucky that we've got 300 million, social followers as an MTV brand globally. So that makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah. No, I think that probably doesn't harm. It's better to have 300 million, you said, than 0 or 4 users. But still, I want to make it a little bit more difficult for you, if you don't mind, because MTV does have, some few very strong brands, and there is a subscription business model in many places around the world. But and again, it's open to the whole panel. The advertisers today, they also see what's happening in their measurements, and the demand for data is becoming bigger and bigger. So how do you cope with that? Because now advertisers, at least in digital platforms, they know how many people started, how many people completed the views, what is a monetizable view, what is not a monetizable view, what's a valid click, what is not a valid click, what's a valid session, and so on. And now they have more demand for that, and that's kind of, I assume, changing the paradigm a little bit. How do you think that impacts your models and
It just means you have to have a lot of people who are really good at data who can respond to things. And I think for us, each platform has a different way of gauging what's a good view and what length of time and a micro view and all of these kind of things. And I think it's just really looking at how we can do it across uniques. That's kind of the simplest way in which we sell. And I think that's something that everybody understands. So from that perspective, that's kind of how we look at it. But we definitely know, I mean, we have so much data. We have a massive research team, and we're constantly analysing and looking at the best ways. But at the end of the time, I'd also throw that back and say, I know people who'll spend 200 grand just having that influencer, and they're not getting the numbers that they think they're going to get. They're not getting. So I'd say that it's a mixture of different things. You can't just say it's about that, because I'm always surprised when someone goes, I'll pay X just to have that person for 2 minutes do something as an influencer. So
you don't think, or are you working with any influencers or trying to touch the influencers economy, except for, the stars?
Yeah, we work with in
SpongeBob
various different ways, because each one's different and each one brings a different flavor, and each one wants something different as well. So what can we give to them, and what can they give? So it's never the same working with one influencer to another, but we generally work with a lot of different people. And we bring our reach, they bring their audience, and brands love that. So it's a really nice place to be. So we're very lucky in that respect.
Yeah, excellent. And Dolly, same question to you about the commercial models and their evolution.
Yeah, we've had quite a challenge in that obviously what we're famous for is creating content. And so we've moved now into branded content and native content in a big way in the last kind of 18 months. And it's the biggest part, the fastest growing part of our business commercially. But we still sometimes get clients who say, okay, I'm paying X and I'm going to get native content and I want it to say this. I want you just to talk about my brand and say how good my product is. And so we have to kind of take them on this journey of education about what really good content is, because they're talking to our consumer who we know really well, and we can gauge our audience reaction to all of our content, and we can say that to the client, and they can say, yeah, I know that all sounds really nice, but I still want you just to talk about how good my product is. So then we have to say, okay, well, we'll write that because we need your money to maintain our business, but you're going to get completely rubbish engagement levels. And so we've had to educate them kind of by failing, because then they're saying, oh, well, why did that perform so badly? And we're like, well, please refer to my email of last week where I said if we actually use this really good content idea, it would actually genuinely get organic engagement in a way that you would then be able to grow a whole conversation with our consumer. So that's been quite a learning experience, because clients have spent a lot of time and money creating their aesthetic, and they create their kind of media campaigns, which in print look fantastic, but it doesn't tell a story in the same way that we know our users will engage with. So that's been quite a journey, which is ongoing.
Yeah, Sarah wanted
to... So as the old-fashioned presence in the room, we're really clear about monetization. So we sell our own, we sell in a quality environment, premium content, premium price. We sell it obviously on linear, we sell all of our own on all four and over OTT. And so for us, one of the challenges of engaging with these otherwise very exciting platforms is the monetization models just do not work for us. It's so much better for us to sell our own. So I think there's quite a sort of schism, if you like. There's the commercially monetizing your content, and we're a free-to-air broadcaster, we're 95% ad-funded. And then there's recognizing that you have to build brand engagement and resonance on platforms where you may not make any money, but you have to be there because your audience is.
Oh, of course, and I think, again, we mentioned Playbuzz before, but it's also today, even in YouTube, people understand that if you are Beyonce, you're maybe making a significant revenue stream, but for others, that's what started the influencers economy. Now also in Facebook video and Snapchat, people sometimes use it to build the audience and then monetize them on other platforms. So do you have any activities of trying to start a funnel of users online and then get either more people to subscribe to a channel, to a magazine, to your premium service? Sarah will start.
we're a different dynamic because we are essentially long-form content, by which I mean proper television programs, and then we are increasingly investing in making short-form content because clearly if you want to get to these digital platforms, people don't hang around long enough to watch a long-form, quite apart from the monetization issues. So we are increasingly using the two. We work with different digital platforms as a marketing tool to bring people back to the main service where we're able to monetize more efficiently and give them a more quality experience. But our predominant traffic at the moment still comes to our own site. So.
Yeah, I understand. But Georgie, same question to you. How much do you use the digital, open, massive platforms to try to convert users to the more premium, in-depth services, subscriptions, etc.?
I mean, we're all in the content business. You know, we think content first at all times, and you know, when digital kind of became a big thing about sort of 6 or 7 years ago, you know, from our kind of in our magazine world, I think there was a sort of rush to try and create something in digital and just replicate what was in the magazine and put it online. And actually, I think that can sometimes be very detrimental to your core print product because you're cannibalizing that audience. So what we've kind of done at Cosmopolitan is kind of separate the brands in a way that the print product sort of is a much more long-form content read. We kind of reach a sort of a slightly older audience than we do online, whereas online is much more listicles and videos and galleries. It's much faster. It's got quite distinctive content tone and feel from our print and into our digital space. And then it's understanding about how you bring that audience to that digital property because, you know, gone are the days where people are really typing in a URL homepage and visiting your site that way. It's being done through social referral. So, you know, we now obsess about what content we create on social, whereas that's really changed in the last 2 or 3 years. So we focus as much on the content that we're putting out on our social channels because it's taking, I guess, about 80% of our traffic on Cosmo now comes from social referral. So that means that they are not typing in home pages, they are following our brands across social media, they're seeing content they want to engage with and then coming through to our site that way. So the social outreach of our brands is so critical and so important. The way that we kind of create that content is as important as the print content we're creating and then selling that on the newsstand because that's what's bringing people to our sites.
Yeah, so it's still, let's say, one thing leads the user, fan, subscriber to the other, but they're all as equally important, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah.
Great. And Joe, same question to you.
Yeah,
how you use one platform to leverage the other?
Very similar, but what we have started doing is, you know, to pilot a TV show is really expensive. So what we've done is we've started to use Snapchat as a kind of testing, piloting lab, basically. So we've just got MTV Studios, and we've basically taken a lot of short form series that we want to turn into long form, and we're using that as a place to really experiment with our content and get immediate feedback and sort of understand what is resonating with our audiences. And we've had big successes with that. And we're doing the same in comedy as well. It's something that the US has been doing for years. There's something like Swagasaurus, which is huge on Snapchat. You know, he's now got his own TV show that'll be airing in the US in January. So we really are having fun experimenting with all of it, you know, and we know where we monetize the strongest. So there's obviously a bigger emphasis on the platforms where we make the most money. We are a big media company after all. But then there's also the, you know, marketing value that you have to put on creating digital extras that support your key linear TV shows. And that's something that we're really good at doing, and that drives huge traffic for us as well. So
in other words, it's still
it's an ecosystem.
that's the classic digital model, building the funnel, A/B testing, growth hacking, as they say it in my techie little world, and in order at the end of the day to cash out on the TV. Sorry if I'm doing.
Yeah, you've got just a different. It's just a much bigger playing field and playground in order to just try different things, and different content works with different platforms because you have different age groups and audiences. And we're very aware of what those are. And obviously for TV, you want to bring your audience age down because that's what the advertisers want. So, you know, we're able to play around and see what works. So, yeah, that's kind of how we do it. There's no, you know, one that is bigger or better. I think, you know, our traffic comes from referrals as well, hugely. We treat them all as our favorite children.
Oh, great. Very, again, encouraging to see this kind of approach. And Dolly, same to you. How do you leverage one platform to?
No, I think they all feed into and from each other. So we have and you're constantly, as you say, constantly experimenting and constantly re-looking at things in a different light with a view to how the audience is now engaging. So a couple of examples recently is GQ's beaten all traffic records recently because we found in the archive a feature on Melania Trump where she posed naked lying on a fur rug 15 years ago before there was a GQ website. And
You said Trump's wife.
Sorry?
Who did you say it was?
Melania Trump.
Oh, Melania Trump.
Donald
Yeah, I have to say, that's at least a good thing, because now when Trump is there, we don't have to be politically correct anymore. It's politically correct instead.
There she was. So we found it in the archive, put it online, and it's been the highest traffic driving page on GQ for a couple of months, and we've been able to rework it and have an entire digital strategy around that piece, which people were continually coming back to look at, and every time Trump said something, everybody would go back to look at those pictures. Slightly less sort of controversially, obviously we had the Duchess of Cambridge on the cover for the centenary issue of Vogue, and the traffic to the Vogue website during that month of that magazine being on sale was absolutely giant. So we had a whole strategy of content of people arriving just because they'd seen that cover somewhere. They came online to find more about it. And so while the interview that Alexandra Schulman
did... So here the TV actually created the funnel for the digital and not the other way around. Okay, that's
so we're doing both because the conversation is happening on all of these different platforms in a slightly different way. So you then tailor the story or tailor the content to engage the audience that is there. So you're going to them, as you say, rather than expecting them to come to you.
Yeah, well, it's a great example, and we'll stay with you for another second. And next question, I think, to the panels is, we touched it a little bit, but how does the product itself, how is it different than before? I mean, earlier in Vogue or in Cosmo, sometimes an article will be 6, 8 pages, a lot of pictures in the middle. Now in digital, or of course whenever TV is concerned, and TV, there's the linear TV, and there's the Snapchat TV. How does it affect the product? I think we all mentioned one point in this conversation that it's much shorter, but how else is it different than the traditional product?
You mean how the content's different?
Yeah, the content products, I mean.
I mean, I don't think there's a definite one size, for each different platform. I mean, we have a lot of success with long form in some of our digital properties. So we experiment with long form as well as the short form snackable stuff. I think the data has been a game changer because we've got a big data team now, and where before data was slightly a dirty word and it sounded really uncreative and it just wasn't something people really wanted to deal with if they were journalists, because by a journalist you're creative and you're just kind of sensing what would be a good story. And data's beginning to infuse everything we do in a really creative way, so you're data informed rather than data enforced. And that's begun to change the way the print magazine editors work as well, because they're like, well, hang on, if everybody for Condé Nast Traveler is, what's trending for Condé Nast Traveler in October was where to go in January, or all of summer where to go in October. So then Melinda started to change the cover lines on the front of the magazine based on what we were doing digitally. So I think, the same data is informing all of the different platforms. So it's not that, long form works on, in print and short form only on Facebook. It's all changing.
So a lot of different platforms and a lot of different packages, etc. So now maybe something for the benefit of the audience. I'm sure you see a lot. You come from very diverse media companies, very big, 26 platforms, 300 million Z-gens, etc. If I am an entrepreneur and I want to do something new and innovate in that space, where do you see innovation? Just in a sentence or two, where you think people can innovate? I'm sure the audience would love to hear where you think there's a gap or a void. Anybody wants to start?
I mean, I think it's video, anything, everything video. I mean, for us, that's all we do now. I mean, our text and image it's got to be so punchy. It's got to be a meme. It's got to be something moving. We're seeing kids who can answer 40 snaps, in under a minute, just using their camera phones. So it's really about image and video. And if people can create, I see the apps that my kids are using. They all think they're YouTubers. The way in which they kind of interact with the devices and technology is seamless, and I think it's just being able to allow people to make their own content as quickly, cheaply, and brilliantly as possible. And I think, to me, that feels like,
So the innovation is just, again, by the way, the conclusion of every content-related panel is that content is king. So just innovation in the content, crispier, quicker, and so on. Great.
I think so, I completely agree with Joe, but it's also about understanding what your audience's mindset is. You think about what Generation Z are facing as young people coming into the working world, and their choice of careers is completely different from what mine and ours all were. And there's some ridiculous statistic, like 75% of them want to start their own business and be entrepreneurs, and they're very different from millennials. They're very much about being good and doing good for society and having a positive impact on the world and wanting to work hard at school. They're very different from millennials. So if you can position your business as someone who is supporting Generation Zs in their entrepreneurial dream themselves, you are all entrepreneurs, create something that helps other entrepreneurs build their own dream, build their career, build their business. That, to me, we're getting so much content and so much outreach from our audience about, how do I go on and become a super blogger? How do I go on and start my own business? And it's a big content pillar for us. So, it's about understanding who they are as well as, what your business is. So how can you support that audience as they start to transcend into the next stages of their life?
And so the innovation is just find the way to connect with the Z-Geners. They're going to live for 100 more years.
Absolutely.
And just stay them with them for the ride. Okay, I think that's a very good insight. Sarah, Dolly, do you have any?
I definitely concur with all of that. They've got a social conscience, they're very grounded, they're very creative. For them, tech is a utility. They just had it from day one. They're the first generation of whom that's the case. It's lost that novelty value that older generations have about it. So they're very, very into empowerment, and they don't look at the world and think it's there for the taking, as millennials might have done. They look at the world and think it's how do we save and change it. And that's hugely empowering as a generation.
By the way, yeah.
It's very exciting to make content for these people because Channel 4 News, for example, we don't monetize that on digital platforms, but it's having an absolute heyday on Facebook with younger demographics who just want to engage with the world.
That's
they might not
encouraging.
come to watch that on linear television, but they care about what's happening around them. These kids have grown up in recession. They've seen hardship. They've understood unemployment. They're watching the world, global environment around us change by the day. Look at Trump's environment appointment this morning. Major issues that occupy their sort
I
of
think
brain
Trump
past.
is very good also for parodies. I forgot to say that before. People who have satiric, he will give them a lot of food.
My major mantra would be not to patronize them because they're a very, very
No, I was
savvy
just patronizing Trump. I
generation.
wasn't
Not you,
patronizing
just not
them.
you. But I mean,
No,
the people entrepreneurially targeting this demo, they're very savvy.
Yeah, no, of course, they're very sophisticated and conscious. We all agree. So if you don't mind, I'll just go to the last question because it's important. Let me first take another question to the audience. How many in the audience are entrepreneur? Can you raise your hands? Entrepreneurs in the audience? Now, leave your hand, please, if you're only if you're a woman entrepreneur.
Hey.
So first I see, it's a very surprising number, but still the majority are male entrepreneurs. And we have here just the opportunity between us ladies, especially the four to my right that build very impressive and successful careers in big media companies. What you is now this generation and also the world in general, is this a better environment for women entrepreneurs? Maybe content, which is more on the creative side, will that help us see? Every time I ask it, I see less hands, so I'm very encouraged to see a lot of female entrepreneurs here. But I think we all wish there were more, and I think you can maybe give them an advice or what you think will help us see more. You think there's an opportunity for female entrepreneurs? You think there's still in the media some glass ceilings? I mean, we don't have a lot more times, but there are quite a few women entrepreneurs there that would like to hear what you have to say about this. So I think Georgie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the glass ceiling anymore. It's the glass escalator. It's the glass cliff. It's the sticky floor. It's the concrete ceiling. I mean, I've kind of lost track of all the buzzword bullshit, as we were saying earlier, that kind of captures the mood of, female talent in the industry. And I still think there's a massive confidence gap with women at work, and that doesn't matter whether you work for a brand like Cosmopolitan or Vogue or MTV or Channel 4. You still have to step up in a room of people, and whether that's a room of women or a room of men. So I think, it's about building that confidence. And I would just say, be bold, be kind, be brave. That will get you a long way. You don't have to be a man to succeed. Let's kind of embrace all of our feminine qualities and make sure that we're kind of using those to get ahead rather than trying to become something we're not.
Yeah, and when I look at my team that work for me, I see just as many girls as boys in the team, and I see not only is it around, your sex, but there's just diversity much more in what we're doing, and I think for Jen, they don't care what colour you are, what gender you are, what sexuality you think you've come under. They've grown up in a world where, gay marriage is a thing, and they've got the first African American president, and they don't think about those things. It's not something to sort of go, oh my God, this is amazing, because they've grown up in that world of it. And I think that it's not even a question in my team. We don't even have those kind of questions. We don't even talk about, oh, you're a girl, you should do this or that. I see a generation where it's not all completely gone, don't get me wrong, I'm not just sorry, but I do see a much more level playing field in younger generations, absolutely, and I think that we should celebrate that.
But do you agree with Georgie's comment about still the confidence? Because I think...
There's some inherent personality, gender stereotypes that are sort of, you can't quite get away from. Men are more risk-taking in general. Women, therefore, must accept that take risks. Some of them do it naturally, others it comes less naturally. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, there's risk inherent in that, and that maybe goes counter to some stereotypes. But I agree with you, we just don't talk about it anymore. Yeah. That said, though, it's interesting.
But the work is not done, I think,
I'm
from
not
a very pro approach.
Just going to say that diversity is the new normal for this generation, definitely, be that sexual, racial, gender. So hopefully they will grow up without those confidence issues that maybe our generation still have. My executive team is 9 men and 2 women. That's not a particularly good ratio. My team underneath me is half and half. That's a good ratio.
Excellent. And Dolly, maybe a sentence or two.
Yeah, I'm sort of, in two camps about it. Part of me thinks just live your life and work your career without being obsessed about it. Just be really, really good at what you're doing and work really, really hard, and don't consider yourself either one or the other. On the other hand, you should celebrate what you are and be proud. And if heels make you feel empowered, whether you're a man or a woman, then wear them and wear pink and wear glitter and whatever you like. But I don't know whether I was brought up with an older brother who was really close in age, and we were educated the same, so I've always just considered myself just good at things, and I'm going to work really hard, and whether I was a boy or a girl wasn't relevant, and I think that's helped. But I do meet women on my team sometimes who seem underconfident, and I hate to think that's because they're a girl. I think that's maybe just because the way they are, and so we try and build their confidence. But I think to your point about being kind, I think that's a really good one. For women to support other women is a relatively new concept in the working world, and I think it's a really powerful one.
I think we have a very optimistic, again, few angles, but saying the self, probably the work is not done, but we're in a very big place, and the issue is not even about girl power, it's just something like that, but just people being very good at what they have, and have, no matter what they are, who they are, just to have the confidence, be good at what you do, and this is the right time for that. Excellent. I think that's a great message also from all the entrepreneurs in the audience. So thank you very much, young ladies. That was great. Pleasure talking with you all. And thank you.